Witches. We see them as Halloween costumes. We see them on the silver screen. We see them in pop culture. We've seen them for decades, glorified and demonized. They have been everywhere since the start of this country, but their history goes back much farther than the Americas, and their impact isn't just brooms and cauldrons. So to fully understand the importance of witches, we have to go back to the beginning. In the 15th century, dangerous political climates and the clashing religions sparked the first documented witch trials in Valais, Switzerland, which expanded the frontier of religious persecution and gave rise to the Salem witch trials affecting the governmental system of the United States. Long before the trial started, religious changes emerged in Switzerland. According to one historian named Geoffrey Burton Russell, it was from the time the Catholics arrived in Western Europe that concern for witchcraft greatly increased. This religious change caused tensions between people who practiced Catholicism and people who had been there many years before and been isolated from their ways. Along with the religious change, Valais had other problems brewing. Wars sparked, political tensions rose, and rebellions emerged. Interestingly enough, the Valais witch trials began in the midst of all this tension. This wasn't an uncommon thing. Historians like Brian P. Yavack believe that the witch trials were just a bigger part of political conflicts. So the raging society that caused the outbreak of bloodshed was just cradling the perfect environment for chaos to unfold. In August of 1428, the people of Valais decreed that if anyone were to be accused of witchcraft, they would be burned in the name of the law. These rules were laid out in a document written and signed by Thomas van Each. Immediately after, people were accused left and right. A report written by documenter Hans Freund theorized that over 700 people were killed in the span of the trials. Unfortunately, till this day, we don't know the exact number of casualties, but we do know that 200 people had been burned in Switzerland 2 years into the trials. To put that into perspective, the infamous Salem witch trials only killed 25 people. Even though the emotions and impact of this trial are important, the reason this trial is monumental is because of the frontier it crossed. This witch trial expanded the frontier of religious persecution.
That set of trials is one of the first really clear examples of what can happen when people get put on trial for witchcraft under this system that is talked about as inquisitorial system. The word inquisitorial, we think of like church inquisitions, and it is that too, but it's not just that. It's a deeper legal system where the court itself and court officials, legal officials, take the responsibility for investigating a case and prosecuting a case.
This is where it is believed that the victims of these trials were kept, tortured, and questioned. Even though the trial subsided, the tensions these trials brought never died, and they would continue haunting Europe until the early periods of modernization. But before we understand the modern-day effects, we have to know the impact of this new spreading wildfire. News circulated about the trials in Valais, and soon every state of Switzerland was burning witches at the stake. The chronologist named Johannes Snyder wrote about what he saw during the trials and created concepts that would be used by famous theologians and authors throughout the witch-hunting era. One concept that he wrote about was the Sabbath, which was the idea that witches always gathered with other witches. This is the reason why people throughout the era always targeted multiple individuals at the same time. The Valais trials did not just spread ideas. They helped catalyze the start of the inquisitorial system throughout Europe.
Witch trials are one of the first really important examples of a type of legal system that in fact becomes the modern legal system. And witch trials are one of the ways it gets exported across Europe and ultimately over to North America with Salem and so forth.
This new system dictated the way the trials were run and organized throughout the whole continent. Even after the trials ended in Europe, this system would be continued to be used today. Hundreds of years after the trials began, their effect was felt in the newly colonized Americas during the infamous events of Salem. We see the similarity in how the trials were practiced. During the Valais trials, the Valais chronologist Hans Freund reported that many were never willing to confess and allowed themselves to be tortured to death. They were nonetheless tried and burned, whether they were dead or alive. These actions were sparked by fear. More to say about this is Michael D. Bailey.
The idea that comes to develop that they are always operating under the guidance of the devil and of demons and so forth, and that therefore they're not just doing random bad things because they're bad people, but that this is really a conspiracy that is being directed quite consciously to unsettle and ultimately destroy good, proper, decent society. That's a framework, and that's a line of thought and a line of fear that one can see keeps getting replicated throughout history.
We see this fear again during the Salem witch trials. One article written by the First Amendment Encyclopedia wrote about the trials in the small Massachusetts town. This article says that 19 individuals who had refused to admit guilt were hanged and another was pressed to death. This similarity connects the trials, and it shows us that witch hunts still held on to their roots in Valais, even after many decades. And even though the descriptions of Salem silencing their victims sounds brutal, this did not occur in vain. Because of this practice, legislators wanted to use the trials to serve as a reminder of the unfairness in judicial rulings. So, they created the saying, "innocent until proven guilty." This motto protects citizens from unjust procedures from courts. It also continues to be a key part of our justice system today.
And the great irony is, when you think about it in terms of witch trials, like, oh, that's terrible, that's awful, a terrible thing happened. But actually, that inquisitorial system is to this day the modern criminal system.
The Valais witch trials sparked from massive violence, but went on to create new changes and opportunities for legal systems and persecutions. The ideas and debates that come from this era can be compared to many that we still debate today.
Any sort of conspiracy theory thing breaks out. And the same type of stereotypes that got associated with witches often seem to circulate around, that, they're very much not just, a bad person or even a criminal who's committing a crime, but for some reason.
So let these trials be an example of how small events can create major frontiers while altering the course of world history and transforming the future.